Oh, that was pretty graceful entry, I think. Well, the kids are down and it's Saturday night. So exciting. But we wanted to make sure that we got a video out for you guys tomorrow. So here we are.
This is a continuation of our milestones series. And in the last episode, we talked about how our plans, no matter how hard we tried, they just continued to fail. We left off after 9/11 and we had to move out of SF because we had lost our jobs, and because of our visas, we needed to vacate the country within 30 days.
So we packed everything up and moved home, back to Vancouver. And we moved into my parents' place. They were gracious and generous enough to offer up their home for us to move into, and that we did. We definitely, or I definitely, moved home with a sense of defeat, I think. I'd expected for us to do all those things that we were going to do, like get a green card and make decent money and do the things that young people want to do with their lives. And what turned out is that you come back to your parents' place, and what I didn't mention the last time is that one of those purchases that we made, or I made in SF, was a shiny silver Audi, and it was my dream car at the time. I babied it. I loved that thing. And
Like, he would spend every weekend washing and waxing that car.
not every weekend, but close. Thankfully, it sold days before.
Literally 2 days before we moved.
Yeah, 2 days before we moved. And I was just thankful that we were able to offload it before we moved. But the reality is, when we moved back to Vancouver, not only did I have to move back into my parents' place, but I ended up driving my mom's CRV. And so I think I've alluded to that joke in one of our videos. Is it possible to look cool driving your mom's CRV?
Well, while we were living in the in-laws' basement suite, thankfully it was a basement suite, it wasn't cohabitation. So thankful for them. We spent the next several months looking for work. So here we were, highly educated, lots of experience, and living in a country where we're citizens of and able and to work without needing any special documentation. And there was no work to be found. Even answering phones, I couldn't even get a job answering phones. It was just so bleak.
Yeah, that was a pretty rough patch. And at the time, I was also trying to chase down leads and contacts that I still had in the US, and they were all exhausted and just at a point where just don't know what we're gonna do next.
And it got to the point where we were so desperate that all we could do was get on our knees and pray and bargain with God. Lots of, okay, God, if you do this for us, we will do this for you.
And guess what comes out of our mouths? Of all things, if you send us back to the US, if you're gonna give us a do-over, we're gonna live life completely different, focus on you, God, and do what you wanna do through our lives. I don't know why that came out of us, but it did. And then, I don't know, about a month later,
I don't know, it was pretty soon after, I think.
it was soon enough that it just, it was crazy. I get a call from a previous employer in the Bay Area. And in one conversation, I was offered a job back there with no need for an interview, and Dan will hire you back at the same salary. Does that sound good to you? And when Flo and I talked about it, I think we were just dumbfounded by not only the timing, but the precision at which the response from God came. And it was...
Also, all of it was just so bizarre, right? Like, why would a company call a previous employee and offer them, a previous employee that left, by the way, not left on his own accord, and then offered him a job without an interview and at the previous salary, like whatever he was making before.
Yeah, it was nonsensical. So,
yeah.
Anyways, we did the sensical thing and just said, okay, well, we had made that agreement with God, and that was his answer. So what is our response? And our response was, okay, let's do this. But let's do this with the right heart and with the right intentions. And so we started the relocation back to the Bay Area, and this time we chose to move to Oakland.
Yeah, and we chose to move to Oakland because that's where our church was. And again, our promise to God was to do what he wanted to do through us. And we thought it meant serving in our church and being closer to our church community.
We were getting plugged in to the church, growing friendships to a deeper level, continuing on with friendships that we had already before we left that first time. And things were looking good. During this whole time was a growing passion in me of the creative bent. And I never used to even doodle when I was a kid, so I probably couldn't even draw a stickman properly.
About 5.5 months into our move back, I was looking at our last 2 boxes of things to unpack.
Literally 2 boxes.
And I thought, could it be that this is it? And so, at that time, I finally opened the boxes and started putting stuff up. And what do you say to me?
Well, this is during a time when I was doing more of the design stuff on my own time and the creative thing. And what comes out of my mouth at the time was, hey, if I get laid off again, we're going to move back to Vancouver and I'm going to start my own video business.
And I'm like, what? Whatever. Totally, just 2 weeks later, Dan gets a new boss at work, and he's kind of excited because he's like, you know what, I have a meeting with him tomorrow. We're gonna, these are some ideas I have about my job.
Right, just trying to have a really good attitude about this change. Okay, being called into the meeting with the new manager and walk in and say, hey, the HR manager is also sitting in the meeting. So at that point, I'm beginning to clue in on what's happening. So I sat down, and I think the next 5 minutes kind of went something like what Charlie Brown would hear from his teacher, wah, 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 mixed in with, well, with the current economic situation, wah, 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 job, wah, terminated. So I walked back to my desk, pack my personal things into a box, and I get into my car and start driving home. And I call up Flo. I say, hey, honey, guess what?
I got laid off. And I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, I remember her saying shut up quite clearly.
Yeah, you're joking, right? And he was like, no, I'm not. And my heart just sank. And I looked up at the photos I just hung.
It was kind of like a blur after that. yeah, trying to hustle for another job to keep me in the US, and all those leads had dried up. And again, and for the last time, we packed up and moved home.
I think one of our biggest questions that we had was why? Why would you send us back to the Bay Area just for this very short amount of time, just to take it away from us again? And I think our conclusion was just, we craved stability and security in our lives, and the more we wanted it, the harder it was for us to achieve. And in Jeremiah 29:11, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope." And I think for the very first time, I realized that I just wanted and needed to surrender those desires that I had for stability and security up to Him, and truly allow Him to have control over my life, and to know that He is good. He knows what is best for us, and He is always good, no matter what.
Isn't it always the case that down the line in the future you realize, oh, that's why it happened that way? And all these circumstances and all these events that happened was just the beginning of preparing us for the future. And it's crystal clear now as to why those things happen. Because if those things didn't happen, we wouldn't be here talking to you guys.
That's right.